Hello students, welcome to our class. This is Stephanie, and in today's class we are going to look at ways we can say that things are made of and where things came from. So, which grammar structure can we use to express those ideas? The passive voice. We use the passive voice when we need to emphasize the object. We have here two sentences and I want you to take a look on them. So, the first one, my sweater is made of wool. We have a real example here. My sweater is really made of wool. And the second sentence, the toys were imported from China for the store. Alright, those two sentences have the passive voice. So let's take a look in more detail about what is the passive voice. Well, first we are going to look at what is the passive voice. Why do we use the passive voice? And how do we use the passive voice? So this is the lesson plan for this class here. We're going to take a look in details in all those elements here. Alright? Let's start. First, what is the passive voice? So we are going to look at some examples and please pay attention to the construction of them and repeat them with me so you can practice pronunciation. So the first one, I drink coffee every day. The second one, coffee is drunk at breakfast. And the third one, coffee is drunk by 157 million Americans. So guys, based on those three sentences here, do you know who is drinking coffee in all those three sentences? I'm not sure, right? And can you identify the subject in each sentence here? We have I, coffee, and coffee. Those three words are the subjects here in each of those sentences. But it's not true that we know who is drinking coffee in all of those sentences. In the first one, I drink coffee, so it's me. In the second one, coffee is drunk at breakfast. We don't know who is drinking coffee, right? We just know that coffee is drunk at breakfast, but we don't know if it's you who's drinking coffee at breakfast or if it's me, right? And in the third one, we have that coffee is drunk by 157 million Americans. So we have by, so we can identify who is drinking. So this quantity of Americans is drinking coffee. Well, usually a person can do an action. For example, I can walk, I can swim, I can sing, I can talk. So a person usually will do an action. But an object cannot do an action, but it can have an action done to it. So in this case, coffee is drunk. So the drinking action is made on the coffee. So the coffee is having an action to it. So this is when we use the passive voice. And what is the difference between a passive voice and an active voice? First of all, an active voice is a sentence where we can identify easily the subject. For example, everybody loves chocolate. And how can we make this sentence in the passive voice? Chocolate is loved by everybody. Let's look at more examples here. The lifeguard saved a man. And the second one, in the passive voice, a man was saved by the lifeguard. And what about this sentence here? Decorators are painting my house. This is in the active voice, but how can we make this in passive? My house is being painted by decorators. Can you notice that the word that we have in the end of the phrase will be in the beginning of the phrase when we are using the passive voice and transforming from the active to the passive? So basically, when you have something that had an action done to it, we have the passive voice. Now, let's take a look in 4 situations that we can use the passive voice. The first one, when the action is more important or relevant than the person who does the action. For example, 1 million reais were donated to Rio Grande do Sul. In this case, we are more interested in the quantity of the money that was donated to Rio Grande do Sul, because that's very important. Maybe the person who donated don't want to be identified, or you just want to focus on the quantity. In the second case, we have this one here. When the person who does the action is not known or it's unimportant. So for example, if I want to say that this water bottle was made on 2022, I don't want to identify who made this water bottle because it's not relevant to this context here. I'm just mentioning the year of fabrication of this object here. We also have the third context in which we can use the passive voice. That is when the person who is doing the action is obvious. So for example, if we say that Bill was arrested last night, he went to the jail. What do we mean here? He was arrested. We always know who is arresting people. It's the police. It's the police role, the police job. And finally, we have the fourth context here, when the object cannot do the action itself. So for example, we have 2,000 iPhones were sold in Brazil last year. This is a great example because iPhones cannot sell itself. Now guys, let's take a look on how can we make the passive voice. First, the basic generation of the passive voice. We always will need the verb to be plus a past participle. What is a past participle? It's the third column of verbs. So we have this column here, and all those verbs here in the last column are in the past participle. So we can use the verb to be plus the past participle to make a passive voice sentence. To express what things are made of, we often will use the simple present passive voice. And how can we make it? We need the verb to be in the present simple form. We are going to have is and are. We are going to use is for singular and are for plural and the past participle. So this construction here will enable us to use the simple present passive voice. Now, to talk about where things came from, we need to use the passive voice again, but in the past form, in the simple past form. So how can we make it? Well, we still need the verb to be plus the past participle, but in this case, we are going to use the verb to be in the past simple form. So you're going to have is will become was and are will become were. Was is the form of the verb to be in the singular form and were in the plural form. Alright guys, this is all for this class. What I want you to do extra practice is to look at this website here below, and it's on the description as well. You're going to choose a news and read this news, trying to find passive voice. And then you're going to make changes on the sentences. I want you to turn the active voice you find in those news to passive voice. So I hope you liked this class. Please click in like button here, share the class with your friends, subscribe in this channel because I'm going to upload more and more lessons for you. And if you have any questions, please let me know here on the comments. Thank you guys for attending this class. See you!